Everyone at the table pulls out their phone. Someone says, "Smile," the flashes go off, and you just stand there, hands in your pockets, watching it happen, not reaching for anything. It's not that you forgot your phone. It's not that you don't care about the moment. Something in you just doesn't move toward the camera the way other people do. And you've probably spent years assuming that was a flaw, some version of antisocial, some version of not being fully present. Tonight, we're going to take that assumption apart because the psychology behind people who never take photos is one of the most revealing things I've come across. And what it actually says about you is almost the opposite of what you've been told.
Here is the first thing the research tells us. For most people, taking a photo is not primarily about preserving a memory. It is a social act, a performance, a signal sent to the people around them that says, I am here, I am enjoying this, I am someone who documents their life. Sociologist Irving Goffman spent decades studying what he called the presentation of self, the way humans perform versions of themselves in social settings. And what modern researchers applying his framework to social media have found is that the camera, for most people, has become the central prop in that performance. When someone raises their phone at a dinner table, they are not just taking a photo. They are broadcasting a self. They are constructing a narrative. I have good taste. I have good company. I have a life worth looking at. People who don't take photos are often people who are deeply uncomfortable with that performance. Not because they are antisocial, but because something in them resists the gap between the constructed version and the real one. They would rather be in the moment fully than spend the moment producing evidence that they were there. That is not a deficiency. That is a very specific kind of integrity. Psychologist Sherry Turkle, who has studied how technology changes human relationships for over 30 years, found that people who document experiences compulsively often report feeling less present during them, and sometimes can't distinguish between the memory of the moment and the photo they took of it. The photo replaced the memory. The people who didn't take the photo, they kept the thing itself.
Now, here is where it gets more personal, because there is a difference between not wanting to take photos and not wanting to be in them. And for a lot of people, it's both for completely different reasons. Not taking photos is often about presence, but not wanting to be photographed is often about identity. Research in self-perception psychology shows that people who are uncomfortable being photographed frequently describe the same experience. The photo doesn't look like them, not in a vanity sense, in a deeper sense. The image captures a frozen version of a face they don't recognize as themselves, because the self they experience from the inside is dynamic, contextual, in motion. A still image feels like a lie. There is also the matter of control. When someone else takes your photo, they are making a decision about how you will be seen. They choose the angle, the moment, the expression, and for people who are highly sensitive to being misrepresented, who have spent years being misread or misunderstood, handing that control to someone else, even briefly, feels genuinely uncomfortable. Psychologist Carl Rogers wrote about the gap between the ideal self and the perceived self, the difference between who we know ourselves to be and how we believe we appear to others. People who avoid cameras often have a large and painful version of that gap, not because they are insecure in the way that word usually means, but because they know themselves well enough to know that no photo has ever quite captured it. That is not insecurity. That is a specific kind of self-awareness that most people never develop.
There's another layer here that almost nobody talks about, and it has to do with how different people store experience. Cognitive psychologist Endel Tulving made a distinction between two types of memory that became foundational in memory research. Episodic memory, the vivid, embodied recall of a specific experience, and semantic memory, factual knowledge about events without the emotional texture of being there. What researchers studying photography and memory have found is something that should make every compulsive photo taker uncomfortable. Taking a photo of something often weakens episodic memory of it. The brain, knowing that the information is externally stored, reduces the effort it puts into encoding the experience itself. The camera becomes a cognitive offload device, and what gets offloaded is the actual feeling of being there. People who don't take photos often have unusually strong episodic memory. Not always, but frequently. They remember specific details of conversations, the quality of light at a particular moment, the feeling in the room that night. They don't have the photo. They have something the photo cannot hold. This is not nostalgia for its own sake.
This is a person whose brain was trained through years of not outsourcing memory to hold experience internally in full resolution. The archive is not in a cloud, it's in them, and it goes places no camera can follow. That quiet man at the party who never takes photos, he will remember that evening in 20 years in a way that the man who shot 47 photos might not. Here is the part that explains the most, and it is the part most people around camera avoiders never understand. For some people, photographs feel like a form of extraction, a moment that belonged to them, that was private, internal, real, is suddenly made into an object. It can be shared, seen, commented on, taken out of context, stored somewhere indefinitely. The moment stops being theirs. Psychologists who study privacy as a psychological need, not a legal concept, but a genuine internal requirement, consistently find that privacy-oriented people experience external documentation of their lives as a boundary violation, even a minor one, even with people they trust. This is not paranoia. Research on privacy as a fundamental human need goes back to the work of Erwin Altman in the 1970s, who found that control over personal information is one of the core mechanisms humans use to regulate their sense of identity and autonomy. The moment you are photographed without wanting to be, a small piece of that control is removed. And for people who have had control removed in other areas of their life, who grew up in environments where their interior world was not respected, where privacy was not a right, the camera can carry a disproportionate weight. Avoiding it is not irrational. It is a boundary that was drawn somewhere necessary. The person who always steps out of the frame is often the person who learned, earlier than most, that the world doesn't always handle what it sees with care, so they stopped offering it so freely.
So, what does it mean to be the person who never takes photos? Here is what the psychology actually says. It means you are someone for whom the experience is more important than the evidence of it. You are not interested in constructing a version of your life for external consumption. You live it in a way that doesn't require proof. It means you likely have a stronger sense of your own internal world than most people around you, and a lower tolerance for the gap between how things are and how they appear. The performance of living a life doesn't interest you. The actual living does. It means your memory works differently, not worse. Differently. The things you were fully present for are stored in a way that photographs can't replicate, with texture, feeling, context, the whole weight of the moment. And it may mean that at some point, you learned that your interior life was worth protecting, that not everything needs to be seen, that some moments are more real for being held privately than for being shared. This is not a flaw that needs correcting. It is not introversion, though it often lives alongside it. It is not fear, though it can look like that from the outside. It is a person who decided, perhaps a very long time ago,
The next time someone points a camera at you and you feel that familiar pull to step back, don't apologize for it. Pay attention to it instead. Ask yourself what you are actually protecting, because it is probably something real, something that belongs to you, something the photo would flatten into a surface, when what it actually is deep. The people who never take photos are not absent from their own lives. They are more present in them than almost anyone in the room. They just don't need proof. If this video described you or someone you know, share it. The right person will read that title and feel, for the first time, that someone finally understood something about them they never had words for.